Welcome to an extraordinary episode of the Temporal Paradox Podcast. Today, we confront a crisis that would baffle and fascinate history's greatest military minds. Invisible armies conquering without firing a shot, empires built from stolen data, and wars won before anyone knows they've begun. The crisis has a name: Salt Typhoon. Since 2019, Chinese state-sponsored hackers have infiltrated the telecommunications backbone of over 80 countries. They've burrowed into the networks of Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, the very channels through which our civilization communicates. For 3 to 5 years, they moved undetected, patient as shadows, gathering intelligence from over 1 million users, including high-level government officials and presidential campaigns. The FBI calls it the most egregious national security breach in US history. But here's what makes Salt Typhoon remarkable. They didn't destroy, they didn't announce themselves with digital destruction. They simply listened, watched, collected. Like ghosts in the machine, they achieved something that would seem impossible to warriors of the past. Conquest without visibility, victory without declaration, empire without territory. To discuss this evolution of warfare, we've bent time itself to bring together two of history's most influential military minds, separated by 17 centuries but united by their revolutionary understanding of power, intelligence, and conquest. From the steppes of Mongolia in the 13th century, we have Temujin, Genghis Khan, who built the largest contiguous land empire in human history. His Mongol cavalry moved like lightning across continents, but more remarkably, he created the Yam, a communication network that could carry messages across 5,000 miles in mere weeks. His spies infiltrated every kingdom years before his armies arrived. He understood that information was power, but he wielded that power with visible, overwhelming force that left no doubt who ruled. From ancient China's spring and autumn period, we have Sun Wu, Master Sun Tzu, the philosopher general whose 13 chapters on the art of war have guided strategists for over 2 millennia. His radical proposition, that supreme excellence consists not of winning battles, but of defeating enemies before fighting begins. Be extremely subtle, even to the point of formlessness, he wrote. Be extremely mysterious, even to the point of soundlessness. These two titans of strategy represent opposite philosophies: visible dominance versus invisible influence, the thunder of cavalry versus the silence of shadows, conquest that announces itself versus victory that goes unnoticed. Gentlemen, you've been observing our modern crisis from beyond. A new form of warfare has emerged, one that happens in fiber optic cables instead of battlefields, in server rooms instead of throne rooms. Salt Typhoon has achieved what neither of you could have imagined: simultaneous presence in hundreds of enemy strongholds, perfect intelligence gathering without a single spy being caught, conquest of critical infrastructure without anyone seeing an invading army. Master Sun, as the philosopher of subtle victory, perhaps you should begin. Does Salt Typhoon represent the ultimate expression of your teachings, or have these digital warriors gone beyond even what you envisioned?
Consider this, Khan. For 25 centuries, scholars have debated whether my principles could truly achieve what I claimed: complete victory without battle, conquest without confrontation. Some called it philosophy, not strategy; theory, not practice. But here, in this digital age, we witness the perfect vindication of every principle I set to bamboo and silk. Salt Typhoon. The very name evokes water, does it not? A typhoon that leaves no physical destruction, only the invisible accumulation of salt, knowledge crystallized from the ocean of data. For 3 to 5 years, they moved like water through the smallest gaps in your telecommunications networks. Patient as the mountain, fluid as the stream, gathering intelligence like morning dew collects on grass. Drop by imperceptible drop. All warfare is based on deception, I wrote. But even I could not have imagined deception so perfect that the enemy provides the very channels for their own surveillance. These digital warriors didn't need to place spies in courts or merchants on trade routes. They became the medium itself, invisible, essential, trusted. When Americans made phone calls, sent messages, shared secrets, they unknowingly whispered directly into their adversary's ear. You, Khan, understood intelligence gathering. Your YAM network was revolutionary, physical riders carrying physical messages across impossible distances. But imagine if your enemies had never seen those riders, never knew messages were being intercepted, never realized their own communication systems served you. This is what Salt Typhoon achieved. Supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. They controlled without conquering, influenced without invading. The water metaphor becomes literal here. Data flows like rivers through fiber optic cables, and he who controls the flow controls the landscape of knowledge. They didn't destroy these rivers. Destruction is primitive, temporary. Instead, they diverted tiny streams of information, so subtle that the river seemed unchanged. Tell me, Khan, when your armies approached a city, defenders saw dust clouds on the horizon and prepared. But what if you had already been inside their walls for years, reading every letter, hearing every plan, knowing every weakness, all while they felt perfectly secure? This is the evolution from visible to invisible power, from conquering bodies to conquering information itself. Be extremely subtle, even to the point of formlessness. Salt Typhoon has no form, no armies to count, no territory to measure, no physical presence to detect, yet their presence spans continents. Their reach extends into the most secure facilities. Their influence shapes decisions in ways the influenced never recognize. You conquered with the thunder of 10,000 hooves. Effective, certainly. Fear is a powerful tool, but fear requires maintenance. Constant displays of strength, endless enforcement. Salt Typhoon achieves something more elegant. Control without awareness, influence without attribution, victory without the enemy knowing there was ever a war. This is the way.
Invisible warfare! Bah! You speak of these Salt Typhoon infiltrators as if they are conquerors, but I ask you, where are their banners? Where is the terror in their enemies' eyes? Where is the moment when a nation falls to its knees and acknowledges its new master? I conquered from sunrise to sunset, from the frozen forests of Rus to the burning sands of Persia. When my armies approached, the earth itself trembled. Cities that resisted became monuments of skulls. Those that submitted flew my standard and prospered under my law. The world knew Genghis Khan ruled them. They spoke my name in fear and reverence across every tongue and every land. These cyber shadows you describe, they skulk in darkness for years like common thieves, 5 years hiding in these networks, stealing whispers and correspondence. Yes, my YAM network carried intelligence across my empire faster than any system before it. Yes, my spies lived among enemies, mapping their weaknesses, but these were tools for true conquest. My enemies knew the Khan's justice was coming. They saw the dust clouds of my cavalry on the horizon. They heard the whistling of our arrows. Tell me, when the FBI discovered Salt Typhoon, did America surrender? Did they send tribute? Did they acknowledge Chinese dominion? No. They simply fixed their networks and complained. What victory is this? If a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, has it truly fallen? If you conquer an enemy and they don't know they're conquered, have you won anything at all? Power that hides itself is power that fears confrontation. The eternal blue sky did not grant me dominion over the earth to hide in shadows. When I took a city, the world knew it. When I destroyed an empire, songs were sung of it. My name echoes through 8 centuries because my conquest was visible, undeniable, absolute. What good is stealing secrets if you cannot use them to plant your banner on enemy soil?
Honor Khan, let us examine what Salt Typhoon actually achieved. They read communications from presidential campaigns, knowing political strategies years before elections. They accessed CALEA systems, the very tools Americans built to wiretap their own criminals, turned into windows for foreign eyes. 80 countries, Khan. Not 80 cities or provinces, 80 sovereign nations, all infiltrated simultaneously, none aware of the other's compromise. You speak of visible power commanding respect, but tell me this, Which commands more? The army that must constantly patrol, enforce, remind subjects of their submission, or the invisible presence that shapes decisions from within, where leaders believe they act freely while unknowingly serving another's purpose? You value the enemy knowing who conquered them. But observe, Salt Typhoon shapes American policy without Americans knowing why they feel vulnerable. They influence elections without casting votes. They modify strategic decisions through uncertainty alone. Is this not a more profound control than requiring submission ceremonies? When your descendants see a Mongol warrior, they remember conquest. When modern leaders make decisions, they don't even know they're compensating for Salt Typhoon's presence, which is true power, remembered dominance, or unrecognized influence that shapes the very thoughts of your enemies. The principle remains: be extremely mysterious, even to the point of soundlessness. They achieved what we only theorized, becoming the void itself, present in absence, powerful in invisibility.
Though, wait, 80 countries, you say? Even my empire, vast as the sky itself, reached only 40 modern nations. To have spies in 80 countries simultaneously, all gathering intelligence without detection. And this Salt Typhoon, they control the very channels of communication, like having spies not just in the enemy camp, but inside every message, every dispatch, every secret whispered between commanders. My YAM network united my empire through communication, but imagine if I could have heard every message my enemies sent, every plan, every fear, every weakness laid bare. When I conquered, yes, I needed my enemies to see their defeat. But the intelligence made that defeat certain. My spies in Khwarezm told me the Shah's army was divided, his generals jealous of each other. That knowledge was worth 10,000 cavalry. And these cyber infiltrators have such knowledge from 80 nations at once. What could I have achieved with such tools? To know every enemy's movement without sending a single rider. To hear their plans without torturing a single prisoner. The eternal blue sky knows I would have used such power. But then what? Intelligence without action is merely gossip. My spies served the thunder of my cavalry. They prepared the battlefield for visible conquest. Without the arrow following the scout's report, without the siege following the spy's map, what is the purpose? Tell me, philosopher, if victory has no witness, if conquest bears no name, if power hides eternally in shadow, is it truly victory at all?
Ah, now you begin to see, Khan. Imagine if you controlled not just some messenger routes, but all of them. Every road, every path, every whisper between lovers, every command between generals, simultaneously. This is what Salt Typhoon achieved through telecommunications infrastructure. They didn't just intercept messages, they became the medium itself. 3 to 5 years of patience. Consider this timeline, Khan. While modern leaders think in election cycles and quarterly reports, Salt Typhoon's architects thought like ancient Chinese farmers: plant in spring, tend in summer, harvest in autumn. For over 1,000 days, they gathered intelligence like storing grain, kernel by kernel. No haste, no greed, just methodical accumulation of strategic advantage. 1 million users' data flows through their invisible hands, real-time interception, not historical records. When an American general discusses troop movements, Salt Typhoon hears it as the words form. When diplomats negotiate, they witness strategy being born. This is not espionage, Khan. This is omniscience achieved through patience. The purpose. As I wrote, every battle is won before it is fought. Salt Typhoon shapes the battlefield before anyone knows there is a battlefield. By the time conflict emerges, trade wars, territorial disputes, technological competition, they've already spent years knowing every strength, weakness, plan, and contingency of their opponents. Imagine you're playing chess, Khan, but your opponent doesn't know the game has started. You've studied their every move for 5 years, know their patterns, their weaknesses, their plans. When they finally sit down to play, believing it's the beginning, You're already at checkmate. This is Salt Typhoon's purpose, not destroying infrastructure, but transforming it into strategic advantage. They wait, they watch, they win before action becomes necessary. This is the way.
The Yam. Yes, the Yam. I created the first network to span continents. 1,400 stations, 50,000 horses, messages crossing my empire in days instead of months. From sunrise to sunset, from the lands of the Rus to the Middle Kingdom, my network bound it all together. And now, these Salt Typhoon infiltrators attack the descendants of what I pioneered. These telecommunications, these fiber optics you speak of, they are my Yam reborn in glass and lightning. I revolutionized how empires communicate, and they dare to corrupt my creation for shadow games. Let me tell you what the Yam achieved. When rebels rose in Persia, I knew within 7 days. My orders reached the nearest Tumen in 4 more days. The rebellion died before it could spread. That was the power of speed. When the Jin dynasty tried to forge an alliance against me, my riders intercepted their messages. I knew their plans before their own generals. The governor of Bukhara thought he had weeks to prepare defenses. My Yam told me he'd sent his garrison away. My cavalry arrived in half the expected time. The city fell without siege. Salt Typhoon sits in these networks like I sat at the center of the Yam. Every message, every plan flowing through their grasp. They've achieved what I achieved, but across the entire world. Instead of horses, they use electricity. Instead of riders, they use, what do you call them? Packets of data. But here's the difference, philosopher. My messages carried orders. Attack at dawn, burn the city, spare those who submit. The Yam wasn't just for listening, it was for commanding. Every message led to action, every dispatch moved armies. What orders can Salt Typhoon give from shadows? What commands can they issue without revealing themselves? They gather intelligence for 5 years, but then what? Do they conquer? Do they rule? Or do they just keep listening? Power that never shows itself is like drawing a bow but never releasing the arrow. Impressive, perhaps, but ultimately impotent. Even with all this knowledge, all this control, without visible conquest, what empire have they truly built?
Power without visible force. Observe what Salt Typhoon has achieved without issuing a single command, without declaring a single demand. They shape decisions through the most powerful force of all, uncertainty. Consider this, Khan. American companies now spend billions, not millions, billions on cybersecurity. Not because Salt Typhoon demanded it, but because uncertainty gnaws at them. What might be compromised? Which conversations were heard? They changed their entire behavior, believing it's prudent business practice. The enemy moves himself. The U.S. Congress just allocated $3 billion to rip out Chinese telecommunications equipment. Salt Typhoon never destroyed this equipment, never made it malfunction. Yet, through mere presence, or the fear of presence, they forced America to destroy its own infrastructure and rebuild. Tell me, Khan, is this not more elegant than burning cities? The enemy burns their own bridges, thinking it wisdom. The beauty lies in the enemy believing these are their own ideas. No American general wakes thinking, I must obey Salt Typhoon's wishes. Instead, they think, I must protect our communications, never realizing that this very act of protection, this massive expenditure, this operational disruption, is the victory Salt Typhoon sought. Without visibility, without attribution, without a single declaration of intent, they've made the world's most powerful nation redirect its wealth and change its behavior. The enemy dances to music they don't even hear. This is the way.
But here's what troubles me, Sun Tzu. The FBI discovered them. After all that shadow dancing, all that invisible maneuvering, they were found. 5 years of perfect stealth, then suddenly the Americans cry out, "We see you!" The invisibility you praise so highly, it failed. And what now? Yes, they say Salt Typhoon cannot be fully removed, like stubborn lice in fur. But everyone knows they're there. Every nation now guards against them, upgrades their defenses, watches for their signatures. The element of surprise, gone. The advantage of stealth, vanished. When I took Beijing, it stayed taken. When I conquered Samarkand, my banner flew there until my death and beyond. My grandsons ruled from my conquests. Their grandsons built upon what I seized. That is true victory, permanent, undeniable, generational. These cyber warriors achieved magnificent infiltration, yes, like smoke through every crack, water through every crevice. I admire the skill, but what is their endgame? They listen to phone calls, read messages, steal plans, and then, when every nation hardens their networks, builds new defenses, creates new systems, what empire remains? My warriors, they saw their victories. They rode through conquered gates, counted enemy dead, divided spoils of war. They told stories to their children. I was there when the Great Wall fell. I shot the arrow that killed their champion. Their names are carved in stone, sung in songs. These Salt Typhoon operatives, what glory do they know? They sit in dark rooms, staring at glowing screens, typing on keyboards. No one knows their names. Their families cannot speak of their triumphs. They win a battle that cannot be celebrated, conquer territories that don't exist. Is that a life for a warrior? To achieve perhaps the greatest intelligence coup in history and receive, what? A secret medal in a secret ceremony that no one will ever know about? The human heart needs recognition, philosopher. Even you wrote your book so your name would echo through ages. Power that must hide forever is a special kind of prison. These cyber warriors have built themselves a cage of shadows.
You raise an astute observation, Khan. The discovery after 3 to 5 years. Perhaps this too was calculated. Like a farmer who knows winter must come, they maximized the harvest while seasons permitted. They gathered intelligence worth decades of traditional espionage, knowing that even formlessness cannot last forever. But here, Khan, I must concede something important. Warfare evolves with technology, from bronze to iron, as you moved from horse to gunpowder. Now we move from gunpowder to silicon. Each age demands new strategies, yet perhaps each age also demands we retain the wisdom of the past. Observe modern China, Khan. They maintain the world's largest standing army, visible, powerful, commanding respect as your horsemen once did. Yet simultaneously they deploy Salt Typhoon, invisible, patient, formless. They understand what perhaps we, divided by centuries, can see together. True power requires both the thunder and the silence. Your visible force prevents traditional aggression. None dare attack when armies stand ready. My invisible methods gather intelligence, shape decisions, win battles before they begin. Modern powers need both. The aircraft carrier that all can see, and the cyber capability that none can detect. The diplomatic threat that makes headlines, and the quiet infiltration that makes no sound. Perhaps, Great Khan, we are not opposites, but complementary forces. Like the ancient symbol of yin and yang, your visible strength and my invisible influence forever circling, each containing a seed of the other. Salt Typhoon succeeds because nations fear China's visible might prevents retaliation, while China's armies succeed because invisible intelligence guides their potential deployment. This evolution doesn't replace our principles, it combines them.
You know, if I had possessed Salt Typhoon's capabilities alongside my cavalry. Imagine it, Sun Tzu. Every enemy plan known before they think it fully formed. Every alliance detected before the first messenger dispatched. Every weakness mapped without sending a single scout. And then, Then comes the thunder of 10,000 horses, the visible fist following the invisible eye. My empire might have been eternal. I see it now. Whether through my yam or these fiber optic cables, whether through riders or routers, control of information has always been the true foundation of empire. I controlled the steps because I controlled what people knew and when they knew it. Salt Typhoon controls, perhaps more than we yet understand. My grandson Kublai, wise beyond his years, he understood this balance. He conquered China not just with Mongol cavalry, but by becoming Chinese emperor. He wielded visible power through armies while wielding invisible power through culture, administration, knowledge. He adapted, he synthesized. Perhaps Salt Typhoon and conventional military forces are the modern version of this synthesis. The hackers gather intelligence, map weaknesses, create confusion, like my spies but multiplied 1,000-fold. Then, if needed, visible force can strike with perfect knowledge. Or perhaps the threat of that force, combined with total information awareness, makes actual conquest unnecessary. These cyber warriors have achieved something remarkable. To sit in 80 enemy camps simultaneously, to hear every whisper, know every secret. By the eternal blue sky, what power! Yes, they were discovered, but they showed the world a new form of dominance. They've proven that in this age, whoever controls information controls reality itself. The battlefield has evolved from grassland to cyberspace, the weapons from arrows to algorithms, but the principle remains eternal. Control information, control the empire. My yam moved at the speed of horses. Their networks move at the speed of light. Both serve the same master, power. Perhaps you were right about one thing, philosopher. The supreme excellence may indeed be winning without fighting. But I maintain, someone, somewhere, must know they've been conquered. Otherwise, what stories will their children tell? Though I confess, if I could have conquered the world from a comfortable chair with glowing screens instead of freezing on horseback through Siberian winters, I might have considered it.
And there we have it. Two of history's greatest military minds grappling with warfare's digital evolution. From the thundering hooves of the Mongol horde to the silent infiltration of fiber optic cables, from the revolutionary YAM network to the global reach of Salt Typhoon, we've witnessed a remarkable convergence of ancient wisdom and modern capability. What strikes me most is how both warriors, despite their philosophical differences, recognize the same fundamental truth. Information control has always been the foundation of empire. Genghis Khan's YAM network was, in its time, as revolutionary as today's internet. Sun Tzu's principles of deception and formlessness find perfect expression in cyber operations that would have seemed like sorcery to ancient generals. The Salt Typhoon campaign forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about modern conflict. When wars can be fought in silicon instead of soil, when victories can be achieved without declaration, when conquest happens in data centers rather than battlefields, how do we define victory? How do we deter attacks we can't see? How do we defend against enemies who might already be inside our walls? Perhaps most importantly, our two guests revealed that the evolution of warfare doesn't replace old principles, it synthesizes them. Modern nations maintain both visible military might and invisible cyber capabilities, combining Genghis Khan's force with Sun Tzu's subtlety, the thunder and the shadow working in concert. As we face an uncertain digital future where every device could be a gateway and every network a battlefield, the wisdom of these ancient warriors reminds us that while technology evolves, the human dynamics of power, control, and conflict remain remarkably constant. Whether moving at the speed of horses or the speed of light, the goal remains the same: control information, control the world. Thank you for joining us on this temporal journey. Remember, in an age where your phone calls might have uninvited listeners and your messages might travel through unexpected hands, perhaps we should all think a bit more like both Sun Tzu and Genghis Khan. Value the power of information, respect the importance of security, and never underestimate the evolution of warfare. Until next time, this has been the Temporal Paradox Podcast, where yesterday's wisdom meets tomorrow's challenges.